it is not only a company at war with itself, it's at war with pretty much everybody it needs to survive. And how is that not going to show up on the cars that you and I buy?
I'm Doug Stewart, Senior Digital Content Producer at Fox 61 in Hartford. Joining me is Jeff Buchholz from WBBM in Chicago, and Glenn Packman from beautiful Fairfield County, and a car enthusiast. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about Chrysler and Jeep today. And they're part of the bigger Stellantis group, which has a whole other set of problems. But we have these two brands that have an inordinate amount of automotive history in this country, and to some degree the world. And they're in rough shape right now. Outside of selling off their last Chrysler 300s, Chrysler just has the Pacifica. And they can call it two models because they have regular gas and the hybrid, but it's really just one model. Jeep has a wider selection, but their sales are down tremendously this year. Jeff, what do you think it is going on at Chrysler and Jeep, and how do you think you could fix it?
I think the problems at Chrysler and Jeep stem from I think they derive a bit from the turmoil that is happening in a broader sense across Stellantis. This is the behemoth that was created when PSA, the owners of Peugeot and Citroën in France, not only merged with Fiat Chrysler, I should say, which brought its own brands and baggage with it, but also bought General Motors European operations, which gave them Vauxhall and Opel, which were solid brands, but GM Europe had been losing money for a really long time. And what you have a company in a corporate structure. The company is based in the Netherlands, but it is run by a competition, a tug of war between the Italian interests from Fiat Chrysler, the French interests in PSA, and somewhere in the back row are the Americans trying to build Jeeps without a lot of support and without a lot of help in the terms of new product or new investment. It appears that Carlos Tavares, the head of Stellantis, has been doing what shipping container enthusiast Carlos Ghosn was doing when he was running Nissan and Renault in cutting costs as much as possible without really investing in brands. And so what you have is the 300 and the Dodge products on the same platform, the Charger and the Challenger, that had gone unchanged virtually for 20 years. And the reason they continued to sell it all was because they kept putting larger V8 engines in them. Right. But they weren't particularly modern cars, nor were they, particularly efficient cars. But that didn't matter because Hemi. Chrysler, as you point out, is now down to, actually they are down to two cars. They just announced that they are officially bringing back the Voyager nameplate for a version of the Pacifica, which will be wearing the front end of the original Pacifica. I assume that's so they can update a model and not have to pay for additional tooling. Anyway, so you have that. And by the way, the cheapest one of those is going to be $40,000. Right. The Jeep issue is a bit more complex. They have indeed expanded their product line, but they are really not a player in probably the largest growing segment of the SUV market, which is the sort of compact and under. If you think about, the default choice here is the RAV4, CR-V, the Escape, various and sundry Hyundais like the Tucson. Jeep is really not a player there. The Compass is in addition to being discontinued, I think fairly soon, if it hasn't been already, is really not competitive in the
No,
class.
no.
And the Cherokee is gone, and that was only marginally more competitive. It was on the same platform as the old Chrysler 200, the Alfa Romeo C platform that they widened for use in the United States. And the Renegade, which is the companion car to the 500X, the Fiat all-wheel drive, that was built, I think, in Spain. That's
Okay.
also going away. So you're left then with the Wrangler, which is doing okay. In fact, I think the 4xe hybrid Wrangler is actually doing pretty well, all things considered.
Mm.
You have the Gladiator, which kind of missed the mark in terms of
Yeah.
it's not really a compact truck. It doesn't have the capability of a truck, even though most people who drive trucks don't need the capability of a truck. You have the Grand Cherokee, which is fine, but dull. And then you have the Wagoneer, which was kind of stillborn. When
Yeah.
it was rolled out initially by Stellantis, they envisioned Wagoneer as being a luxury sub-brand of Jeep. The first couple of model years, the Wagoneer did not have the Jeep
Yeah.
brand name anywhere on it. The idea being that Wagoneer would become like Range Rover, I suppose, or something like that. But the fact is, the Grand Wagoneer has been gone for so long in its original form, the one everybody loves with the wood grain siding
Right.
and that kind of thing. The final expression of the original Kaiser Jeep Wagoneer from the 60s. And nobody really remembered the Grand Wagoneer as being this, show of opulence. And then this car comes out that's clearly a gussied up Grand Cherokee with no visual linkage to the old Grand Wagoneer.
Right.
And
Right.
also it's $100,000.
Right.
Which
Right.
is crazy.
Y-
Most people buying in that segment would rather have an Escalade or a Navigator, and that's pretty much what they bought, or whatever Lexus is selling. And so
Right.
now they're finally coming around and putting the name Jeep on the platform, on the Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer. There also is now apparently going to be a full electric I
Right.
think it's a
The
wagon.
the S. Yeah, it's a Wagoneer S.
Right.
Glenn and I talked about it a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're out now in final prototype testing. I saw a picture of one the other day. It kind of looks like a Grand Highlander. Like
Yeah.
they're not these cars. Unfortunately, they're not imaginative. They're
Right.
pretty ordinary looking cars. They don't look expensive. The Wranglers are certainly capable because they will always be capable. But the other problem with Wranglers right now is they're having horrible build quality, which is also a
Sure.
Pacifica problem, by the way.
Mm.
Tons of problems with the Pacifica
Yeah.
hybrid that I'm seeing. The Wranglers and Gladiators are beset with corrosion issues,
Mhm.
paint flaking off of door
Yeah.
hinges, like literally on the lot, because there's some weird reaction with the aluminum in the doors and whatever prep work
Mhm.
they're doing. Stellantis is aware of it, apparently. They still haven't found a fix for it. A lot of Wrangler and Gladiator owners are having to go in and have their cars repainted. And there's just a whole lot of not much support for the dealers who are all upset about this whole thing.
Right.
And Carlos Tavares's response seems to be to upset the UAW, to upset various and sundry European governments, and upset all of their suppliers. So it is not only a company at war with itself, it's at war with pretty much everybody it needs to survive. And how is that not going to show up on the cars that you and
Yeah.
I buy? I mean,
Yeah.
the UAW, the new thing with the UAW, and there was a lot of talk about this when I was in Detroit last week. There is a lot of talk now about moving Durango production. They're apparently still making Durangos for a little
Yes.
while longer.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
they're gonna even sunset that.
they're going to
Like
sunset
one of their
that,
most
but
recognizable names, and they're gonna
in
call it a stealth.
well, and so what's going to happen? What apparently is the UAW claims is that they're moving the Durango out of Jefferson North, which is the Detroit assembly plant that was built specifically to manufacture the Grand Cherokee and its variants, and move that production to Canada, which the UAW is not crazy about at all and claims it violates the terms of the collective bargaining agreement that they just signed after that incredibly expensive strike they had last year. Stellantis, for its part, will say, we have not confirmed any changes to the Durango, which is a whole lot different than saying we're not moving it. So yeah, I mean, the place is kind of in chaos, and you can't help but notice that if you stumble onto the lot of Paul Revere Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, and you see like no Chryslers. You see a lot of Jeeps because they're not selling them because there's a lot of concern about them. It's the way I would fix it, I think, is there is no problem on this earth, gentlemen, as you know, that cannot be solved by throwing money at it. And the American operation needs an infusion of money. There's just kind of no way around that. The problem is that the industry is in a state of real flux right now. There is a lot of regulatory concern, not just in the United States, but in other parts of the country or other parts of the world, I should say, about the level of electrification that's going to be required. Stellantis has bought 20% of a Chinese EV maker, giving it the right to produce those vehicles outside of China. And so there's a lot of concern about how much money that's going to cost. Interest rates are high, not just here in the US, but in other countries. Though they're coming down in the US, it still has kind of put a brick on car sales, generally speaking. And the company is still trying to figure out what to do with all of the brands that it owns. Does Stellantis need Alfa Romeo and Maserati? Are Opel and Vauxhall still required in order to survive? What is DS car company anyway? And
I like DS cars.
I am a
Just purely
stan.
from the initials. Yeah.
Yes, of course. I'm a stand for the original Citroen DS, which is one of the great cars of the world and is a car that is still ahead of its time now, 70 years after it was introduced. But it's a company with a lot of brands and not a lot of focus and a lot of competing agendas. And right now, the Americans are kind of on the back burner because up until now, things have been masked because they've been able to sell enough Grand Cherokees and Wranglers to kind of keep the ball rolling. But the Grand Cherokee, the new one, the current one, was not enough of an advance over the old one, which was generally well received because it was, designed with the folks at Daimler in like the one marriage of equals car that actually worked out okay for them. And
in that case.
In that case, yeah, correct. I mean, if the other end, I give you the Chrysler Crossfire, but the company is just kind of all over the place, and I think that it's the company is not functioning well as sort of the forgotten stepchild of this, European juggernaut of an industrial company, the fourth largest car company in the world by production, by the way. I think I did know a couple weeks ago that a long ago sort of descendant of Walter P. Chrysler had offered to buy the brand from Stellantis, and Carlos Tavares and Stellantis said no, essentially. So I guess they have a plan. I guess they're planning to build this Airflow EV SUV, maybe. I don't know. And we talked about this a few months ago when they showed off whatever that concept was. Yeah, that we were like, we don't really know what this is, and we don't really know what they're trying to do. And that's still the case. And I think that the way you fix it is by committing to what they do best. Look at what, and I promise I'm gonna shut up at some point and let Glenn get in here. But here's where you can look for inspiration. The Ford Bronco Sport is basically an Escape with a much more mask for mask appearance. And they're selling like crazy, to the point that Ford, I think, is getting rid of the Escape, and they'll just sell Bronco Sports.
Yeah,
So
I don't see a lot of Escapes.
I see a few of them, but not nearly as many as I see
Yeah.
Bronco Sports. And Ford, because it's Ford and they do this kind of thing really well, has really capitalized on the retro look of the thing with special editions and white steelies and the whole, retro stripes and the whole deal. There's no reason, with all of the platforms at their disposal, that Stellantis cannot come up with a compact SUV styled in the Bronco kind of retro SUV tradition, especially ahead of Volkswagen relaunching the Scout nameplate in the US as an EV line. Call it the Jeepster or the Commando or something, pull another name out of the rich past of, AMC, Kaiser, whatever, and create this kind of retro looking, capable but modern all-wheel drive / front-wheel drive sport utility vehicle, sell it alongside the Wrangler. All of a sudden, that's a bullet train to the market share, to the market that you're looking for, the demo that you want. You've still got the Wrangler as your halo car. Blow up the Gladiator, because it is an experiment that did not work. The Wagoneer needs a refresh already. It's not a cohesive design. It doesn't look anything like a Wagoneer should. It doesn't really know what it is. And the Grand Cherokee needs some kind of a glow up, because it's just, every one of them is gray. Every one of them is, it's just, there's no visual pizzazz at all. As for Chrysler, I don't know, literally introduce any car. I suppose if the Dodge Charger platform works out and sells, once they, get that plant up and running, they'll probably bring out the Chrysler version. And they can't do that soon enough. So that is how I would fix Chrysler Jeep.
Glenn, what are your thoughts?
I'll hang up and listen to the answer.
There's a tough act to follow. Now, actually, it was an excellent summation. I can fix this whole situation with 5 words. You ready? Bring back the Dodge Nitro. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I was hoping you were.
I knew Doug would lose it over
That's
that.
literally the answer to no question.
Wow, what a car. I am a former owner of 2 Chryslers. I think, from a branding point of view, in my mind, as just, somebody who knows more about what they see in a car on the road and in TV and in magazines, Jeep, for me, needs to fill that rugged niche. Jeep says war vehicle to me. That's where they came to fruition, was that they were the completely rugged little things running around in the middle of a war. That was their thing. And to Jeff's point about how they're not crashing the party of the most popular segment right now, the RAV4, etc. segment, there's nothing from Jeep. Well, the answer to me is, come up with something that's going to fit in that segment, but answers the ruggedness. Make it, push it to the rugged end of the spectrum. And I think there's the niche. That's a very crowded segment. Some really competent cars. You've got, the CX50 and the CX5 from Mazda, both very good cars. I mean,
the CX50, man, I would love a CX50. It is so good. It is so good.
Really,
it's gorgeous.
Really terrific cars. I mean, RAV4, if that, not terribly exciting, but perfectly competent, that's for sure. Honda CR-V, the latest gen, is just
very good.
Yeah, it's a great car. So this is a very tough segment. So how do you stand out? well, use the Jeep vibe, get something out there that looks really like it's ready to go off-road. Oh, and maybe make it ready to go off-road, capitalize on what the brand brings, emotionally to the market. And
Yep.
I don't think Jeep has been doing that. I mean, the Renegade, kind of
They tried.
They tried.
They
Sold a bunch
tried.
of them. By the
It
way, I
was
think
it,
Renegade. Go ahead.
it was more design than actual content.
Yeah.
Right.
It was form over function. My
Correct.
mom rented one a couple weeks ago, and it was like, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just it looked cute, but it just like I would not in any way take it near more than a dirt road.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So.
Exactly. And I think that maybe the Renegade was really designed with the European market in mind. They were built, I believe, in Italy.
Oh, Italy. Okay. I thought they were
Yep.
built in Spain, but you're probably right.
Yeah, no, I only know this because years ago we went on a cruise, and the cruise came to port in Civitavecchia, which is near Rome. And right when you get into port, there was a gargantuan parking lot, thousands of acres big, filled with nothing but little Jeep Renegades ready to leave Italy. And I mean, thousands of them ready to go. They also, I think, have a second plant in Brazil. Don't quote me on that. But anyway.
You're exactly correct. I'm
Oh,
looking it
okay.
up now. They were built in Italy, in Melfi, in
Yep.
Brazil, and in China.
Oh, okay. All right. And see, I think that's the roots of that car, is that they were aiming for something with more of a global appeal.
Mhm.
All good and fine, but I think the namesake Jeep needs to inspire that ruggedness. It just that's when ask anybody who knows anything about cars, and that's going to be what a Jeep inspires, So for me, that's what they need to embrace to bring Jeep back. As far as the overarching Chrysler brand goes, in my view, they've been a car with a series of one-hit wonders that have kept them stringing along for a long time. The minivan, terrific car. And then boom, boom, there goes Chrysler. The original 300. There's a couple others. They don't really have anything in their stable right now. And the only thing on the horizon that I've seen that even remotely seems exciting is the new Charger that's around the corner. Because wow, what a pretty car. But is that going to save them? I don't know. I hope so.
Not at $45,000 plus. It's not.
No, yeah. Well,
we've talked here about
yeah,
the crush of winners in the sub 30 grand class, and the
yeah,
fact that there is such a market for them and such a demand, even though it's difficult to build them to make money, although somehow General Motors can.
right.
But yeah, no, that's not the savior. And you're right. Some years ago, I saw a documentary called Detropia, which was about Detroit, and had a chance to meet the filmmaker afterward. And one of the things that she talked about, this is the sort of ethos of Detroit, by the way, that the city was always one really good car away from a comeback. And
Yeah.
for evidence of that, you needed really only to look at the Chrysler Corporation over the last 50 years.
Yep.
The
Yes.
company was what literally got, what, $800 million in, like $1 billion in loan guarantees from the United States government at its nadir in 1980,
Yeah.
79 and 80. And in 1981, the K car came out, and people bought them because it was the car America needed. It was small, it was fuel efficient, it kind of looked like a Chrysler product, and it wasn't built poorly, because Lee Iacocca was insisting that quality get turned up. And
Right.
that's the car that spawned the minivan, and virtually every other car that Chrysler made up until and so then when you started to get like the Dynasty and that kind of thing, the Chrysler sort of tailed off and tailed off and tailed off, and all of a sudden, oh look, it's the cab forward cars. Yeah, it was all engineering that they borrowed from Renault when they took over AMC, but who cares? The cars look fantastic. They look like
Right.
show cars that you could drive. And suddenly Chrysler took off again. And then those kind of waned and got blobby and weird and, and stuff was not great. And then all of a sudden, here comes the LH cars with the 300 and eventually the Charger. Nobody bought that wagon thing. And
But I loved it.
oh, I did too, but nobody bought it. It's like the Germans were
absolutely.
like, oh, we'll give the Americans a wagon. They'll love it. But Americans don't love wagons. They saw SUVs. They didn't need wagons anymore.
It's the three of
and
us.
minivans. Yeah. And we're only going to buy one, and that's it.
Right.
That's the problem. So that is the mentality of that company, certainly, and a lot of the people who work for them. It's like we're just one car away, man.
Yep.
And they just stopped building that last car. And for a while, it was the Grand Cherokee. The Grand Cherokee kept them rolling for a while. And even now, that's the competition's too good. They can't just come out with a they can't just come out with a meh SUV and watch the Ford Explorer drive rings around it.
Right.
I never thought I would see the day when a Ford Explorer with its what is it, the Timberline package? What is the sort of outbackification of the Explorer? Look more rugged than a Grand Cherokee. What? That's it's
right. And if we're coming down to messaging, and that's what it all comes down to, I think that's exactly the problem. Messaging. Oh, what does the brand stand for? Focus, like you said, Jeff, is just so lacking in this company. And the Nitro, bring it back.
Okay, if they're going to bring back,
I think I picked probably the worst of the lot to joke.
If you want the Nitro, I get the Journey.
You get the what?
The Journey.
The Dodge Journey.
Which I think is an attractive looking car.
Yeah,
it goes exactly with kind of like I drive a 2012 Subaru Forester. They're very similar, proportion wise, but I give you that it's got a lot of bad tech anyway.
Well, and particularly in the Cerberus era, during the period of time when private equity owned the Chrysler Corporation, they basically made the interior of those out of recycled milk jugs. And I owned a Wrangler. I owned a JK Wrangler from that period, and I know exactly what a cheap interior looks like. That was the biggest thing that Fiat Chrysler gave them, was the money to zhuzh up the interiors. And they had a guy, Fiat Chrysler's late lamented chairman, Sergio Marchionne, kind of understood what the brands were about. Like he got it, I think. And he was just a charismatic dude anyway. And when the bean counters took over, and then you get in this war with the Italians and the French, and God knows what's going to happen. For once, the Americans are on the sidelines.
But only once.
With their German artillery.
Right. So I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you think, Doug, but I think Glenn and I are really in agreement that they got to literally sell any car and call it a Chrysler, and then find a way to get Jeep back to create something in the small to compact SUV space that has the Jeep attitude about it. And whether it can actually go off-road, it would be nice if it did, but there's plenty of plenty of SUVs that look like they can go off-road and can't. And for most people, that's probably enough.
That's fine.
Yeah. I'm telling you, just if Jeep got on the ball and got something new for what they call the midsize RAV4 SUV, the niche car in America. They got on board, did something completely new, but totally retro to the past. Something that really drums up old Jeep. I would be going to the auto show to see that thing introduced. I really would. Because, there's something we don't have in this country. And honestly, I think that's where SUVs are going, is away from sport and utility in these vehicles, where they're cars. They're cars that just sit up a little higher. And all that's good and fine. It's nice to have the wagon shaped back, for more storage and just better utility. But we're really moving away from those things that were, that spawned the whole thing: off-roading, ruggedness, tons of camping gear fitting in the back, and et cetera. If Jeep came out with something to challenge that market, I would be just, I'd be really anxious to see it. But it's got to be. It's got to be
And
the
it
real
is,
deal.
and it is the sort of thing, and we've talked about this on this podcast before. The car as cultural icon. You have
Right.
it. The
Right.
Mustang certainly is. The Corvette, as we've established, absolutely is.
Right.
Jeep and the Jeep Wrangler, 100%.
Yeah.
If you can distill that into a popular sized, small to compact SUV with a variety of powertrains, gas, electric, hybrid.
Mhm.
Hybrid is probably the way to go at the moment. Print money,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we haven't mentioned it, but if you found a way to resurrect the DNA of the original Jeep Cherokee XJ and put it in there, and maybe you don't use the name because the name is problematic, but
It is now,
if you
yeah.
found a way to make that your at that size, because the Renegade didn't fit it, and
No.
the new Cherokee that they just discontinued didn't fit it, and the Compass is kind of this weird, like, every time I look at them, I'm like, is that a Cherokee or is it? Oh, it's a Compass.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just doesn't have any character to it.
Mhm.
But if you found a way to find that character, the DNA of the XJ, and could put it into something that's where that would take care of that low end of the market, because right now the Compass starts at 26, the Wrangler starts at 31, and then you move up to the Grand Cherokee, which is at 36, and then you jump up to 62 for the Wagoneer, and then the Grand Wagoneer is 91. And the
Those
Gladiator,
are
which, like,
big jumps.
yeah, don't I see a Gladiator.
Mhm.
It doesn't appeal to the pickup people, and it no longer appeals to the Jeep people. Thank you for playing. Here's your lovely party gift.
Yeah.
And this new Wagoneer S is like 70, which also I looked at and I'm like, I can't always. I look at pictures and I'm like, is that the new Escalade IQ, or is that the
Yeah.
whatever?
Yeah. I had, yeah.
So so my recipe for Chrysler is, okay, you become the American Volvo. You sit there and you say you want a premier SUV that's gorgeous, has all the fine points, the crystal, whatever you want to do it, make that your top player, right? And you can run that from, I don't know, 70,000 up to over six figures. Then you have, then they have the XC60, XC40, which runs as an EV or gas. The other ones also come as plug-in hybrids. Glenn's favorite, the EX30, the C40, which comes in two different versions, and electric, but a sedan sort of coupe thing, and the EX90. And if you look that as the framework, is a very simplified, product listing with that indefinable quality that I think the 300 had towards the end. This guy next door has one. It's like every time I look at it, I'm like, wow, that is nice. But if you had that, and like, I don't know why Chrysler has, except for that brief period where they were selling the Aspen, which, right, it was the Durango version, the version
Yes.
of their Durango, which the Aspen, right? Unfortunate name for anyone who was born in the lived in the 70s.
True.
But,
Yeah.
Right. But and so, but you have something there, something, that evokes the Chrysler feeling, right?
Right.
The other thing that I would do would be, I would dump all the Fiats in the Dodge dealership, and I'd put all the Alphas in the Chrysler dealership. Eliminate the separate stores, You get a much, I don't think, I don't understand how anyone makes a living at a Chrysler and a Fiat dealership or an Alpha dealership. I
Oh,
mean,
God.
the all the service department stuff, but
Yeah.
but I still think if you had that, then that roughly corresponds brand wise,
Mhm.
right? And like, oh, you want something really sporty? Well, we have the Alpha, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then get rid of the Hornet. The Hornet, no, sorry, thank you for
Ooh, gosh, yeah, that is, I saw the other day that there are some dealerships, and this is with a lot of the sort of, the military service member, first time kind of buyer, uh, discounts and stuff, incentives baked in. But there are some dealerships that are selling brand new Dodge Hornets for $25,000. I mean, there's tons of them. There's tons of them, and you don't see them on the road. They're all on the lot.
Right.
right. They have like is that the one that has like a 600-day supply?
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would it
They're
have
like-
fit in my garage? Maybe I was looking at the wrong car.
No, I promise you, you weren't looking at the wrong car. Based on the really terrible first reviews it's getting. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an Alfa Romeo that's being sold for less money.
Right.
How, I mean,
Yeah.
even people who like Alfa Romeos say they're terrible to keep on the road. I remember reading a review of the Giulia a few years ago that was like, well, it was in the shop for this, it was in the shop for this, it was in the shop for this, it was gone for 3 months while this was happening, but it was the best car I've ever driven.
For the 10 miles at a time that it
Right.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. I got low mileage on, yeah, because
Yeah. Right.
I feel badly for Chrysler because I think there's a lot of people who, would really like to see it still be survive, and I don't see them doing it, to be honest with you. I don't see them doing it. But
I think it's a heavy lift. The competition's getting better, the competition's getting smarter, and the competition's also getting less expensive. At some point, the Chinese invasion is going to happen, at least in the car market in this country. At some point, it'll happen. They can put as many tariffs and stuff on them as they want. At some point, there will be mainstream Chinese car brands for sale in the US, and they will be, even with tariffs, they will be a darn sight less expensive than the stuff we're buying now. And then,
Right.
it's all up for grabs.
And the thing is, you're going to have the naysayers who are going to screech that it's just junk product and it's garbage and everything. Well, they said exactly the same thing. It's in the late 60s about Japanese cars, that they were just garbage.
And they said the same thing about Korean cars in the 80s.
Yep.
And they were right for the first 10 or 15 years.
Right.
And then
Oh,
they
yeah,
weren't.
absolutely.
Because they learned fast.
Sure,
And
sure.
the thing that China has going for it is that it has spent the last 40 years making partnerships with American car companies. Jeep was the first one, actually. The Beijing Jeep Corporation is still in existence. It's not named the same thing, but it still is around and is a fully Chinese company. They've been learning a lot of stuff and learning from neighbors in Japan and in Korea, and their curve is much steeper than they've conquered that curve a lot faster than a lot of people think.
Right. Yeah. The Japanese
sure.
curve was like this, the Korean curve was like this, and the Chinese curve's like this.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Anyway. All right. That brings us to a close. Thank you, gentlemen. Always a pleasure. And we will be back next time. You can catch up with older car-pinionated episodes on our YouTube channel. Feel free to like it and subscribe it. That helps out our little algorithm. And with that, we will see you next time.